Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited for this opportunity to give folks an early preview of Creation and Its Causes, the latest in a series of books that have been put out by Sheriar Foundation. We have Sheila here and Ward Parks, Sheila Krinsky from the foundation, and Ward Parks, who's going to be teaching as we cross the country in August, September, and part of October. He's going to be teaching about this and sharing with us some of his insights. So this is going to be interactive, but I ask people to please raise your hand if you want to ask a question or anything. And I don't know, Ward, I would imagine you're okay with people asking questions as you go along, right?
Yeah, I think that's best.
Yeah.
It'd be nice for it to be informal and interactive. I haven't prepared anything very extensive for this. It's just going to be general talk about the book. If people raise their hand, how does that happen that they get recognized?
Well, that'll be my job. That'll be my job.
Okay.
When they raise their hand, I'll ask them to unmute, and then they can ask their question.
Oh, am I supposed to unmute? I mean, mute?
Well, yeah, you can stay unmuted. You're special.
That actually, Sheila, it would be good if there's anything you want to chime in with, just go ahead and do that, because you've had this deep engagement with the book.
I'm going to ask everyone else just to stay muted and raise your hand, just so we don't have a lot of crosstalk and background noise. But Ward and Sheila and I will stay unmuted so we can guide things along. So if anybody raises,
can you please ask Ward to move his computer down? I can only see him from the chin up.
Set up,
Let's
Ward.
see, how do I do it? Does that change it? Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Oh, yes. Okay. Very handsome. Yes.
Martha is our producer. She helps.
Okay.
Invisible producer. Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you, Ward.
Yeah, it's night here. We're also in the peak of summer. It's right at the culmination. Actually, the weather, we're starting to get this strong wind blowing. So there are signs of the monsoon, but it's still, really hot here. It's okay. I don't mind it, actually.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing, Ward.
Okay.
And you can take the floor.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's great to be with you guys. The topic, of course, is this new book that's going to be coming out in August from Sheriar Foundation, edited by the Trust, called Creation and Its Causes. This is a title that Ramju Abdullah actually proposed for this particular book. And what this is a the heart and core of it is a series of talks that Baba gave in 1927, 1928 in the Crown, Mehrabad Hill to the Meher Ashram Boys. People have often heard of the Prem Ashram. Well, the Prem Ashram was a group of boys from the Meher Ashram who Baba selected out because they were having high order experiences. But the actual boarding school was called the Meher Ashram. And so for about 2 months, this actually started in late November 1927 until the middle of January. Each evening, or almost every evening, most evenings, Baba would give a talk to these boys. At first, the talks were given in the West Tank Room. I don't know, do you guys know where the museum is up at Mehrabad Hill, the museum room? It was that room. And Baba would go in there and all the boys would be gathered and he would start to give talks. But Baba had been fasting. He actually started fasting in November. But then in the 20th of December, Baba started to seclude himself in the crypt cabin. That was the original structure of what is now the Samadhi. When they built it, nobody could figure out what the heck it was. It was the strangest building because it's a small, it wasn't like it is, it wasn't of stone at that time. It was just plywood. But there was this kind of underground cavern where Baba would sleep at night. And there's, of course, that's where his body lies right now. So Baba began to seclude himself in the crypt cabin. And in the evenings, he would come to a window. There's actually a very nice photo of this, which we're lucky to have. I'll show you in a minute. Baba would come to a window and would talk to the boys who were gathered outside. And I mean, there are no actual descriptions of this, but it must have been pure magic. If you can imagine back in those days, there's no electricity, Erangel village, maybe a few lanterns might have been distantly visible. It would have been after nightfall. This was December, January, 7:30, pitch black. There was an overhead covering. There was a platform, but stars outside. And Baba had really been secluding the boys more and more. Okay, let me just back up a little bit and give a little bit of the history of the schools. By the way, this book includes a history. The first 80 pages of it are a history of all these schools. In 1925, Baba had established himself at Mehrabad in January, and in March he opened the Hazrat Babajan school. This was a basic education school, mostly for Erangel kids. You know, they were, many of them, very poor. It was a very poor, illiterate village. There were upper caste kids there too, but a lot of lower caste kids. But then he suddenly closed everything down in 1926. And in 1927, he reopened the Hazrat Babajan school, but he wanted to do something more than that. So he opened what's called the Hazrat Babajan High School. This is completely different than the Hazrat Babajan school. And it was kind of the formal institution with regular classes. But meantime, up on the hill, he began what he called the Meher Ashram. And Baba advertised very widely in Persia and throughout India, England, and boys came from all over the place, about 100 to 150 boys. And at first they were somewhere else, but very quickly they got established up the hill in those, you know, the rooms there, the East Room, what's now the museum, what used to be the library on the ground floor. All those were part of a water tank that the British had built, and they had to, Baba and the Mandali had to make doors in through it. So mostly the boys were established there. And Baba began to seclude the boys of the Meher Ashram more and more and more in all kinds of ways, and create this kind of highly charged atmosphere. And already by, you see, the Mandali had no idea what was coming. No one could have anticipated it. But already by December, the Mandali were noticing that there was a love craze happening. I mean, some of the boys would suddenly start weeping. And it was just then that Baba began to give this series of talks to them in the evenings. I'll come to the talks next, but to give this history. Over the course of December, these talks went on every night, and you can imagine they must have been pure magic, because the boys were starting to go crazy with love mad. It was becoming more and more pronounced. And on January 1st, there was an explosion where the entire school, just during the day, all the boys began to weep uncontrollably. And the Mandali didn't know what was happening, and they didn't know what on earth to do. Actually, and this is right in the middle of these talks Baba was giving. And when Baba came that they were brought to Baba for the talk that night. He just continued on with his series of talks. And in the middle of January, some of the boys began to get precipitated into the planes of consciousness, especially Abdullah Pakrawan, and there were a bunch of others, but he especially got precipitated up to the 6th plane of consciousness, if you can imagine it. And there was another boy up on the 6th plane also. And his state was so extreme and so fragile that Baba canceled the talk that night and then canceled it the next. And it wound up that the talks got ended. So the talks that we have run from the 2nd of December, 1927 to 14th of January, 1928. And I'll just go on real quickly. Then over the next couple months, the Prem Ashram got established with the particular boys who were in such a state of love and inner experience of the planes that they just couldn't function. They couldn't go to classes. They were incapable of functioning. So Baba separated them out. They were still part of the Meher Ashram. It's not that they weren't, but they got their own separate quarters. And if you read about the Prem Ashram in the marvelous book by Ramju Abdullah, Sobs and Throbs, you'll hear all about that. With the dramas, a lot of the Muslim Mughal boys, the parents started to react to the stories they were hearing, and they would suddenly show up and drag their boys back home again. And one of them, Ali, kept making escapes and running back to Baba. It's quite a spectacular story. That's after these lectures that are the subject of this book. In June, Baba suddenly moved the whole ashram to Toka, which is, 50, 60 kilometers north of Mehrabad, on the right on a river, a confluence of 2 rivers, actually. And then in December, Baba moved it back. This is December 1928. And January 1929, Baba closed the school down. This is a very brief sketch of this 4 or 5 years where Baba was really working with schools. That was the theme. And when you read the history of it, you can see a progression where Baba began on the most elementary level with the Hazrat Babajan school, where he would wash the boys' clothes and brush the boys' teeth, things like that. And gradually we got higher and higher and higher until you have this explosion. So the talks that are right at the center of this book, Creation as Causes, occurred right at the dead center of this period. And it was right at the time that this atom bomb went off among them all, right exactly in the middle of this series of talks. And that's one of the very remarkable aspects of what you can see in this book, in my opinion. That is, one might have expected, in view of the reaction that was precipitated, that the talks would have been on the subject of love, but they weren't. Baba did come to the topic of love at the end of every talk. He would say, now, my point, you can just forget about all of this. Just do one thing, just create love, just create love. Love me. Baba would say that. He made it clear that he was the beloved to them. And actually, just before the real explosion, Baba pretty clearly told them that he was the avatar. And that's one of the very first times that he had ever said that he had ever spelled that out. He's quite unambiguous that that's who he was. He pretty well told these boys that he was the avatar of the age. But the talks themselves were not on the subject of love at all. And that's what's so astonishing. They're high metaphysics, cosmology, the creation of the universe, evolution, this kind of mystical astronomy, and the spiritual path. He told all this stuff about the spiritual path that, You won't find in the discourses or God Speaks or anywhere else. I always say that this is what I would call good students, right? Because Baba gave them all these talks on the spiritual path, and within 10 days, a bunch of the boys were there up to the sixth plane. I dare say those of you who have been teachers may not have had quite such good results among the student bodies that you were working with. So obviously there was something going on with these kids, obviously. I remember Asfendiar Vasali talking about it. I wish I had had the sense to really sit down with him back when he was alive, but he would say how, and I think it was at these talks, maybe other times, but the boys were just all over Baba. You know, they would grab him and they wouldn't want to let go. And I think at the beginning and the end of the talks, Baba would embrace them all, and they would just cling to him and grab him and, you know, tear at him and all of this. And the fact that talks like this on a subject like this would precipitate a reaction like this really makes me think that Baba must have been doing some amazing work with the head and the heart, because the talks are mostly on the head matters, philosophy, metaphysics. And now here's another characteristic of the talks themselves. These 34 talks are just one portion of this book. The most important part, I would say, but there's a lot else there too. But these talks are in their language very simple. Those of you acquainted with God Speaks will know how difficult Baba's presentations can be. God Speaks has very long sentences and very abstruse, very profound, magnificent exposition of his ideas, but it's quite difficult. Well, these talks are not that way at all. The sentences are very short and they're very simple. It's very poetic and vivid, with a lot of metaphoric language and vivid terms to describe things. But
Hey, Ward?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You know, I'm wondering, I assume the Mandali were there in amongst the boys and that they were recording things as he was talking.
Right.
Is that right? So were they writing things down on their notebooks, or how did these get recorded? In other words, is my question.
You know, all that we can say about this is presumptive because there's no description of this happening. This book gives an enormous amount of information about all of this. I mean, in the second half of it, this is what's called a critical edition, which I could maybe talk about later on if we get to it. But so it's presumptive. But in all probability, the boys were there, and those among the Mandali who were directly involved with the teaching of the Meher Ashram school. Other Mandali couldn't come. They couldn't even come up on the hill. As a matter of fact, none of the Mandali were even allowed to touch the boys. Can you get that? I understand it perfectly. I think Baba was creating such a state in them that just the physical touch from someone could have disrupted it. And Baba himself was fasting this whole time. In fact, he fasted from November until May, 6 months, 5.5 months he was fasting. And the boys were completely secluded. It sure looks like something archetypal with the youth of the world was going on here. It just must have been happening. But in all probability, it worked this way. Baba from December 20th would have been in the crypt cabin. He was sleeping down in what is now his tomb, and would come to the window and would dictate out the window. And one of the Mandali, we don't know who, but one of them would read out. But then there was a translation process that went on. so Rauseb, we know this much, translated into Persian. Someone must have translated into Marathi and somebody into Gujarati. So all of this seems so amazing. I mean, can you imagine with a typical American school with a bunch of 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old boys, someone talking on subjects like this with translation going on? It would have been a riot, right? But apparently nobody even mentions it. It seems to have gone on so seamlessly and so powerfully that no one even thought to comment on how the whole thing got done. I just remember Esfandiar Vasali talking about just the madness that was going on among these boys. But what we have is a typed manuscript. We give date by date. It's not the source text, but it does. There are many allusions to taking notes, probably by Chanji. So I think we can say pretty confidently that Chanji took down notes and then he wrote it up and somebody typed it. And what we have is a typed manuscript. We also have 2 manuscripts from Ramju, which I could talk more about. Those are our sources. It's not all that long. And it's, as I say, the prose is not very difficult, but the ideas are unbelievably profound. So why don't I show you what the book looks like, if I can successfully do this. Okay, share. There, can you see, do you see multiple pages there? Is that visible?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, so I'll just show you, this is the entire book, actually. So there's the cover, and the opening part is a history. This is slides 29 to, I don't know, 670 or something, is a history of Baba's work over this 4 or 5 year period. And then this central section, which we'll be looking at more, you can see all these color drawings there, right? I presume that's visible. These are the talks Baba gave to the boys. There are 34 of these lectures here. And that's what we'll probably spend most of the time on. But then there's another part to the book after this, which starts slide 178. Are you all seeing this, 178 and everything? Do you see the numbers?
Yeah, they're small because they're thumbnails.
They're small. No,
Yeah.
I know you can't really see
I
them,
can
but
see where
right.
you're pointing. Yeah, we can see where you're pointing. Yeah.
Can you see the arrow? Does my arrow show up?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see Hazrat Babajan. Okay, here are, these are 6 discourses that Baba gave to the Mandali in this period, November, December. And so we included that because it's a significant item that people haven't seen before, and it's right in the same period. And some of them are, for example, Hazrat Babajan, probably it seems that the evening program for the boys was at about 6:30. One of the Mandali would give them a spiritual lecture on various topics. So Hazrat Babajan might have been one. Or down on slide 188 here, if you can see where the arrow is, that's an image of Hafiz. We could look at that more closely. Well, there's lectures that they would have given on Hafiz. And then after that, Baba would have given his talks, and then they would have gone to bed. And then after this, there's all sorts of material regarding the manuscripts. There's an appendix on evolution. There's an appendix on mystical astronomy, a glossary, notes on the figures, other apparatus relevant to the close study of the book, which we could look at for later on if anyone is interested in that. But since this is just a short presentation, so let's start looking at some of these talks themselves. So there is, okay, are you all seeing this image of the eye and all those little orb of dots? Yeah. Okay, this is where Baba started with them. And he's telling the story of the occasion on which he and Upasani Maharaj, back when Baba was spending time with Maharaj in his hut, tried to count the universes. And it's very clear it's universes, not stars, not galaxies, universes. And they were unable to do it. And Baba almost dropped his body. And there's an explanation of why it is impossible to count the universes. No one has ever done it, and no one ever will. So it's quite a fascinating little discussion. And this is the, you can see below the source image we have, there's the eye, and all those little dots are the universes. So that's where Baba begins. I'll go on to, and then on his second talk, it's really with the third talk that the series really starts. But with this one, Baba started to explain the different levels of knowledge. On the bottom, A, on the bottom left, there's the Shariat, which is, the husk of religion, ritual ceremonies. The spiritual path begins with level B. Marifat would be the mental planes, and realization is the realization of God. So Baba explained that to them. And then he explained how he said Sadhguru, but what he meant was avatar, formulate some kind of a fundamental teaching suited to the time and place, and makes that the basis for his teaching. Quite a fascinating presentation on that. But okay, it's really here that Baba gets going with this talk here. This is the 5th and 6th of December. And I'll just give you, let's scroll through and you can look at look at the pictures. Here's, these are drawn by Nadia Walinska, based in, you can see in the lower right here, the source that we were working from. Actually, Nadia and I met every day for about 1 year and 3 months and worked on these very closely. So this is showing the beginning of the creation process. So here you have God and that orb on the top. There's the creator point, the Om point. Then all these waves and bubbles come out of the Om point. And then there's foam. And Baba never really explained what foam is, although he said he would. Here's another image relevant to that. We'll come back and look at this more. This is showing 3 ranges of planets, C, D, and E, planets in the universe. A, B, and C, if you can see that up in the top here. A is the Earth, and B and C are 2 other planets closely related to the Earth. Baba will come back to that later. Okay, this is a very mysterious diagram. We don't know quite what it means. This is a diagram showing the clash of Pran and Akash. Okay, let me explain a little bit of what Baba's been talking about. His creation narrative that occupies a whole bunch of these lectures focuses on the origination of the universe in Pran and Akash. These are very deep ideas. Pran, you know what prana is, but Baba's using the word in a somewhat deeper way for change or movement within the ocean of God's reality. Earlier on, you may, here, I'll just go back to it quickly and show you this. Baba showed, there's this diagram, this one here. Here, this is the ocean, the A is the ocean of God, and C is the part of the ocean that has jivatmas, drop souls, and D is the part of the ocean that has God-realized personalities. But Baba has been using this figure of the ocean and waves within the ocean. An ocean wave is like a world like the planet Earth. Anyway, Pran is movement, and Akash is something like, you could say space, but it's a deeper idea than what we usually think of as space. It's like potentiality, or if you can try to conceive of the original state where there's no time or space, how can anything happen? Because there's no place for it to happen in. So what Akash is you might say it's an opening where something can happen. And Pran is the principle of happening or change or movement. And what Baba said is they separate and then they clash. You see the clash happening here? And out of the clash of Pran and Akash come the four primordial elements of fire, air, earth, and water. And out of that comes the drop soul, the first Jivatma. For those of you acquainted with God Speaks, this would be the fourth state of God. So this is a very fundamental creation narrative that Baba is giving. There's much, much more to say about this. Two systems of metaphors that Baba brings in here a lot. One is the ocean, which is the reality. Another is a wave, which is the surging movement that results from Pran. Another would be a drop, which is the individualization of the ocean. And a bubble is the manifestation of a wave or a drop with form. You can have wave bubbles and you can have drop bubbles. So a wave bubble would be like our planet Earth, for example. And a drop bubble would be like any of us with our physical bodies. So you have this very, very much developed. Can you imagine explaining this to a bunch of boys? But I think Baba was so vivid that when he would explain it, I think they could see it. Another system of metaphors Baba was using throughout this whole part, and actually throughout the whole series of lectures, has to do with light. There's primordial light, Nur, which is nothing other than the reality of God. There are these light globes, and these are not stars. Baba didn't exactly say this, but they must be in the subtle or mental sphere. And these light globes cast shadows. And the shadow of a light globe is a world like the Earth. That's actually the shadow of a light globe. And the shadow casts, okay, this gets to be wild and crazy, but I'll just give you a brief idea. The shadow casts its reflection into emptiness. And that reflection in emptiness receives the light of the light globe and becomes a sun. So Baba was saying that the sun is actually a reflection of the earth. Clearly, this is not gross plane. This must be talking about how the gross sphere derives from the subtle spheres. It must mean something like that. I've gone through this quickly, so I'm sure it would be hard for you guys to follow all of this, but I'm just trying to give you some idea of some of the topics that Baba was presenting. Baba also talked about this Pran and Akash. Pran is within illusion is a representation of fullness, and Akash is emptiness. So you have this primordial dichotomy of fullness and emptiness. And that creates the inner worlds, the subtle world, which means subtle and mental. The entire 6 planes of consciousness are created by Pran, are the manifestation of Pran. And when it hits the gross, which is emptiness or negation, there you get the Akash. So the inner world is the full manifestation of Pran, and the gross sphere is the full manifestation of Akash. I hope this hasn't been too much of a blitzkrieg, but I'm just trying to give you an idea. Anybody want to bring up anything right now? I know I've given an awful lot here.
You know, Candy Bloom mentioned in the chat window that some of this is explained somewhat in the Nothing and the Everything.
Yeah, there is
Yeah.
a lot there. Yeah. So the first series of lectures are on this, on creation cosmology. Again, this is something that you won't find in God Speaks. Okay. By the way, this is some interesting little feature. This here, you see this handwriting on the right? It's Baba's handwriting. We have two little snippets in Baba's handwriting that were included in this manuscript and that were incorporated into the text. Here's another little piece of handwriting that one of the mandali, maybe Chanji, preserved. And it was included right in the manuscript. Okay, here you can see on this diagram, the gross universe and the subtle universe. And subtle means subtle and mental, the whole 6 planes of consciousness. So you see that the subtle is an outcome of energy or pran, and the gross is an outcome of form or akash. And again, akash is emptiness. This could take some real unpacking and real studying, but the gross sphere is fundamentally empty. It's fundamentally nothingness. And akash and pran manifests there as matter. Here you can see this shows, okay, in this diagram, you see the middle panel there, how the subtle gets divided into 7 spheres, 7 layers. Baba explains this and he compares it to a snake. He says, well, a snake sleeping just lies, but when it wakes, it suddenly forms a whole bunch of coils all at the same time. And in that way, pran divides itself into 7 layers, which comprise the 7 layers of the subtle sphere. The gross has only one, it never subdivides. It's always singular. So thus you have an interaction between the subtle and the gross. I won't even try to explain this, although those of you who might have read Infinite Intelligence or other things will be familiar with Baba's talking about ordinary wakefulness, ordinary dream, sound sleep, divine dream, and divine awakening. Actually, that's right in God's hand. Baba gives the same diagram. So Baba comes to, yeah.
Yeah, can you go back to the sample of Baba's handwriting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Christina had a question, whether that's his actual handwriting.
It seems to be.
Most of this is from his gestures though, right?
Yeah, the rest of it was what somebody wrote down, but this looks like something that Baba wrote. When he wrote, we don't know.
Yeah.
Just this piece of paper was it was in the manuscript, interleafed.
So he stopped writing in 26, right? Or
January 2nd, 1927. So I don't know how this happened. Maybe he had written it out then and they kept it and realized its relevance, or maybe Baba started writing again. I would think that's unlikely. No, this is kind of a mystery.
Christine, did you have more to your question? You can unmute if you want.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions up to this point?
So you can see Baba is giving this extraordinarily cosmological account. And I don't know, I just have a vivid image in my mind. You might ask, how would 13, 14, 15-year-old boys understand this? Well, and that's, an age where you can start to understand these things. But I also think that Baba, when he would explain these things, was so vivid. Like when he would say pran, I don't know what gesture he would use, but you would get the idea of primordial movement. You would just see it. And when Baba would talk about akash or pokal, P-O-K-A-L is another real basic word for emptiness or hollowness, you would get the feeling of an emptiness that is like a receptivity. It's I don't know how to explain this, but it's the creating the possibility for something to happen there. It's emptiness in that sense, because nothing can happen if there isn't an opening, right? And Pokal is the opening. It's the receptivity, the emptiness in that sense. And Pran is what happens there. That's where everything starts. So there's a primordial duality here.
Would that be like in God Speaks, he uses the word prospectiveness?
I think prospectiveness could relate to this, yeah. If we went over God Speaks, there is a place where I think Baba makes allusion to all of this. So we would have to go over pages 8 and 9 closely. But isn't it interesting that Baba basically dropped this topic after the Westerners showed up? He didn't try to explain it really. If you read how it all happened, the early messages to the West, another book that Sheriar has published, has a section on this. And Baba was going to make a movie in Hollywood. And you do get Prana Nakash there. He doesn't use those words, but that's what he's talking about. But he didn't really attempt to explain it again in Discourses or God Speaks or those other places. It's really these early teachings. And this is really the book that explains it fully. When you read this book thoroughly, you'd get a much fuller account of it. So here you have the 7 divisions of Pran, like a snake waking up. Baba uses that metaphor.
You have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Christina, you have a question?
Yes. Hey, Ward, how are you doing?
Hey, good. Hey, Christina. Nice to hear your voice.
You
Yeah.
too. Thank you. Thanks for all the work on this this book. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a comment, which is kind of a question, I guess. The study of semiotics is symbolism is necessary for understanding. There's no such really pure understanding, and it's dangerous to have. There's layers of complexity of symbols, and it's dangerous to have a certain layer of complexity of symbolism taught to children too young. They can go crazy because the mind is forming the way to perceive. And so it makes sense to me that these boys would need to be within a certain age, and that would be, it would be necessary. They would have to have some form of structure already in their perceptive, superstructure. And so it makes sense. It makes sense. And to the question of, why does it seem like it would be so incredibly difficult for these young boys to get this? I think that all of us, or most all of us, have already gone through that period where we established our superstructure of symbolism, and it's fixed. And for us to look at another set of layers of semiotic method, it's extremely difficult, and it seems foreign. And the only way to look at it is like observing it over at the other end of the field. But if you have not crystallized that, I think there's a period of time where it happens. I'm sure that there's neurological study that will, support that. It's like when that period's over, you got what you got.
So you think we don't have a prayer, Christina?
Well,
too late for us.
What I'm saying is that if you don't yet have that, it's not that hard. It's not as hard as it seems to us.
Right,
And
right.
most all of us.
Yeah, no, I
Thank
think that's
Thank
true.
you.
And I think that's exactly what was happening. You know, as a matter of fact, on that very point, Christina, that you're bringing up, um, some of you will know Gil Alvarado, who got to know Baba's disciple Chuggin. He was one of the early Mandali, one of the early teachers, actually, who was very much in the picture at that time. And Chuggin said to Gil that when Baba was talking to these boys, it was nothing like when he talked to adults, because he was talking directly. It just went straight in. This is what you're saying, Christina. And I mean,
Correct. That's what I meant.
yeah, yeah, because they, as you say, they weren't all these crystallized structures already. Baba was providing them with all of that. And that's the thing, is that this, when you, those of you who read it, this series of lectures, these talks, they're very poetic and imagistic. They have very deep ideas, but at the same time, they're full of this vivid imagery, like light globes. I just mentioned light globes and reflections and waves and bubbles and ocean wave bubbles and drop bubbles and all this stuff. The language is full of this. So it's very visualizable. Even though the ideas are so abstruse, that Baba mingled all of this poetic imagery with these abstract ideas. The abstract ideas are certainly there. They're very, very profound. But again, I just feel the certainty that when Baba would explain some like emptiness, you know, well, we just have this word emptiness, but somehow Baba would show it where you would say, oh, like this primordial opening that has a capacity in it. You would see it. He would sort of show it. So I think they got it all. Now, maybe they wouldn't have been able to remember it 6 hours later, but they were going love mad anyway. So somehow all of this was compatible with the love experience for them. That was what was happening in this whole thing.
Wow, that's an interesting comment.
Yeah. So this is yeah.
Ward,
Yeah.
to that point or question, or to that point, everything is a filter. Like we use language as a filter to understand what we perceive. The impulses of our eyes, our ears must be filtered to be understood. And, being the avatar, being perfectly able to choose every second of communication, that structure could be developed such that there was no impediment.
Yeah.
Because all of these, and God speaks in intelligence, it says very clearly, like probably 157 times, your impressions are the obstacle. And so if Meher Baba's giving this information, he's not causing any obstacles. And so to me, it means the more we read and try to understand this material, the better it is for our head to get.
Yeah, we lost her.
You're sort of breaking. We lost her. You were
I think she's
breaking
in the
up there.
car. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I'll
that's
have to
true.
Rejoin.
I mean, I would have no way of knowing this, but what my personal opinion, for what it may be worth, is that Baba was working in an archetypal way on universally. And the impressions he was making were going through these boys onto the entire youth of the future. That's what I personally think. Anyway, this is now moving on to this next section. You see here the opposites. Baba's showing A and Z, how the opposites are really right next to each other. They're very close to each other. And we could spend an hour just on this, if anyone can figure this out. This is these two eyes, gross eyes, these are the gross eyes of the physical body. And this is the third eye. And here you have the mind, which mediates between the gross eyes and the third eye. And between the third eye, Brahma is the God self. Here are the 6 planes of consciousness. This is almost like, makes me think of Cubist art. It's like you're looking at the human head from top down and from the front at the same time. Fascinating. There's much to be said about this. The center is of the third eye and of the gross eyes. The very center is light. That is the God self at the center of things. The black circle is the subtle. Baba says that the subtle is black, it's dark, and the gross is light, because the subtle is the opposite of the point of light, and the gross is the opposite of the subtle. Because this gross is false light, but when you enter into the subtle, you're entering into darkness. So that's a whole topic that gets developed right in this section of it. You can see there's really a lot to delve into here. That one. Now, Baba, here's the original drawing that is on, that Nadia drew, that Sheila worked up into the cover of the book. Okay, I won't even try to. I'll say the infinite is straight and the finite is a circle. Nadia, that insight blew Nadia's mind. Now Baba starts explaining this whole business. It's a mystical astronomy. Here you see the light globe, and the world beneath it down here is a shadow of the light globe, right? It's actually a shadow. It's a deprivation. It's a deficiency. And the shadow casts its reflection into emptiness, like a kosh, pokal, right? And that image receives the light of the light globe. The light of the light globe can't go directly onto its shadow or it would annihilate it. But it does go onto the reflection of the light globe, and that gets shined back onto the world. The reflection of the light globe is the sun, and the shadow is the world. Obviously, Bob is talking about something, how the gross sphere derives from the subtle. I don't know if you followed that. I went through that a bit quickly, but there are several lectures on this. And Baba illustrated it by having these, okay, I won't even try to explain this. This is showing how one light globe produces 7 suns. And here is a diagram of 3 worlds. A is our Earth, and B and C are other planets closely connected with our Earth. We all derive from one single light globe. And through an intricate system of reflections, these are the shadows. This is the shadow of our Earth. This is the shadow or reflection of the B world. And this is the shadow or reflection of the C world. And you wind up getting 7 suns. So this is quite mind-boggling. In Mirana and other places, we'll go into it in depth and show. And Baba illustrated this with having a lantern and 2 mirrors. He showed the boys how a single lantern can produce 4 different images. And he was illustrating how multiple suns come out of a single light globe.
Well, you got to tell the secret here.
What's that?
The secret of what we see in that image.
What's
Baba's
that?
face. Baba's face.
Oh, yes. Yeah. This was a total fluke.
Yeah.
It was only after, Nadia and I've been worried. Nadia did all the artistic work, and she and I would meet and talk. Do you recognize the little face right there? Anybody see that face? Ha! It's obviously, even I can see it. It's Baba's face.
Totally without intent by Nadia, right?
It didn't even occur to us until after it was done and somebody else pointed it out. And so all the image, it's actually there in all the reflections.
Mhm.
That's Baba's face.
It's wonderful.
Yep.
I mean, it really is kind of vivid, I have to say.
It's very vivid.
Did you discover it, Sheila, or who discovered it?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Sheila, you were the one who noticed it,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, Nadia-
can somebody point it out?
See?
I can't-
Right
Can
there.
you see the central lantern? There's Baba's nose is right there. There's his mustache.
We're not
There
seeing
is-
your pointer.
Oh, you don't see the pointer? Oh, I
No.
see. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, if you look at the central lantern, there's his mustache right down towards the bottom. There's his nose right in the center, and his two eyes are there. It's really quite vivid.
Oh, yeah, now I see it. Amazing.
Yeah, Sheila, you were the one who drew it. Yeah, Nadia and I never saw it. We spent so much time on it and we never even noticed it. So this
But
Baba,
Nadia drew it. Right?
yeah, Nadia
Didn't
drew
Nadia
it.
draw it?
She created the
She
whole
noticed
thing,
it.
yeah.
She noticed it.
Because
It's
you
even
can,
in the reflection of lantern,
Yeah. all the
Yeah.
little-
like there's
the
two
light-
face at the bottom.
His
Yeah.
face.
yeah, they're there also, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, we're
So-
coming close to an hour here, Ward. So
Yeah.
look, I'm going to let people unmute if they want to, but I wondered if Sheila would make her announcement again about when the book is coming out,
Yeah,
and maybe tell us a little bit about the book. I mean, you have a lot of knowledge about how the book was put together, and some of that is interesting to me.
Well, I don't remember, but it's between 700 and 800 pages. I think it's 700.
Wow.
about 700, yeah.
And there's lots and lots of color, and the way it works is that can you see my arrow?
No, we can't see.
No,
You're not
okay.
sharing.
That's okay.
Can't see you. Yeah.
Wherever there's an illustration near it, there's the explanation, the key to how it evolved into that. So that goes on with every illustration. And I don't know what else to say. The illustrations are just mind-boggling to me. They're just gorgeous. They're real visualizations of the concepts.
Did you say the price and when it's available?
Yeah, it'll be available sometime toward the end of August. And it'll be hardcover. And what else? Oh, and it'll be $75.
Tell us about the paper, Sheila. I was curious. You mentioned it to me another time, but it's a special kind of paper, right?
Well, it's the paper we do all of our books on. I'm not sure how interesting this is. It's an uncoated sheet, which means it's not a shiny sheet, but it reproduces color extremely well. I forget what it's called right now, and it's a smooth sheet. It's a sheet that I fell in love with years ago, and all of our books are on it. Yeah.
But part of the delay was because.
Well, it's called a mill item. It's not a sheet that's normally used. So they have to manufacture it when we order it. So we ordered it months and months and months ago, and it's on our floor. And otherwise we couldn't use it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you all seeing the images? I'm scrolling as Sheila's talking. Can you see these pages behind it all?
Yes. Hey, Ward, when you showed
Yeah.
the pictures of the human being and the various positions,
Yeah.
they look like yoga positions. It's really interesting.
Yeah. When Baba got to the subject of the evolution of consciousness, this one.
There.
Yeah.
This is where Baba really explained the point that every form in creation is the human form, actually. You know what Baba did was this was still in the West Tank Room, now the museum. That was one of the last talks Baba gave there, where he explained evolution. And he brought a doll, a little mannequin, little doll, and he illustrated evolution through by showing how the human form goes through different turns and manifests itself. And so there are little spaces in the manuscript that were clearly meant for little illustrations of this, but they never got filled in. So unfortunately, we don't have any sources, but Nadia drew this to illustrate how the human form, like in a vegetable form, the human form is upside down. Its head is under the ground, and its feet and hands are up above the air. And gradually through this, the human being stands up. So this is where Baba really explained this idea to the boys.
And are those
can-
the bar sacks or whatever they're called, the ones that can be part of the previous group or the next group?
Yes, yeah, this has a lot more information on that. Yeah. There's an appendix at the back which goes into gives a lot of information on these topics, actually. There's also an appendix on the whole astronomy question because it's so mystifying and so baffling, Baba's account. But another thing that Baba, I'm just scrolling through where you can look at what the book looks like visually. I mean, it's visually stunning, I think. Here you see, Baba explained that moons are old Earths that cooled off and moved aside. So this shows how there are also 7 moons, another baffling thing. But this one, actually Nadia there wasn't a source from this. This shows how the elements are related to evolution. Stone, metal, vegetable, and worm are all connected with earth, right? You can see that on the bottom right quadrant. And then fish are, of course, and some of the Barzaks, as you say, are identified here, where the text tells us crab is, the end of fish form, waterfowl are the beginning of bird form. Some kind of a wattled bird, maybe a turkey is the last bird form. Anyway, birds are connected with air, and animals, that means mammals, are connected with fire, which is the fire of being hungry, sex, and all those kind of gross cravings reach their height in animal form.
Baal says in Nothing in the Everything that rooster is the final bird form.
Uh-huh.
I don't get that.
Hey, Ward, where's the snake? I mean,
That
we put
was,
a lot of evil into the snake. I'm just wondering where the snake is.
You mean in evolution? Baba
Baba's
doesn't-
construct.
Yeah, I know he doesn't really talk about that in the evolution. It's maybe in the worm forms, but he uses the figure of a snake to describe the emergence of the 7 layers of the subtle. Yeah, the last whole bunch of talks, Baba starts talking about the planes and the planes and the skies. And so there's the fullest explanation in any of Baba's discourses. This is a diagram illustrating it. Actually, Nadia created this. I mean, we spent so long on this, I can tell you. But this, these are the planes of consciousness that you'll read about in God Speaks and Discourses. But associated with the planes are asmans, or skies. And if you get off the planes, you're likely to get trapped or intoxicated and bound in these skies or asmans. So you can see in the case of the 3rd plane, for example, it's a little bit too small for you to read it all, but you see the red thing there. There are actually 3 subdivisions of the 3rd sky. There are 2 subdivisions of the 2nd asman, that's the yellow there, heaven and hell. That's actually where heaven, and so people go directly there. They're not conscious of their 2nd plane environment, but that's where heaven and hell are. Then the 4th plane, 5th plane, and 6th plane. So Baba does a review of the 7 asmans. And here's another strange, the last 3 lectures are very, very strange. maybe the strangest in the whole thing. He describes this entire landscape of the inner universe. It's almost like the way it would look to angels or something. What happens is, in fact, we have a diagram showing this. We didn't have any source diagrams for these. The diagrams kind of ran out. Yeah, here's one showing, here's the human form. And on the left, the man on the left, those different points are where the,
we're not seeing it.
oh, you're
still-
not?
No, we're still seeing the skies are
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, I'm moving the wrong one. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's got 2 monitors, so.
Yeah, I forgot.
You got lost in the sky.
Yeah, I got lost
Yeah.
in the skies. So this shows the 5 toes correspond to stone to worm, fish, bird, animal, and human. But then here it is. So you see those different junctures in the human body, those correspond to the planes. And on the right hand side, Baba says there are hollows in the human body. Unfortunately, the manuscript is very corrupt here, so we're not always sure we know what he's talking about. But those correspond to the skies. So like the first plane corresponds to the ankle, and the first asman corresponds to the hollow in the sole of your foot. The fourth plane corresponds to the shoulder, and the fourth sky or asman corresponds to the armpit. And Baba said there are 7 junctures going from your shoulder down to your fingertips. Thus, there are 7 cities. And if you fall from your fingertip, you go all the way down to your little toe. That's what happens if you abuse your subtle powers. You go all the way down to stone form. So you see, the human form is deeply meaningful, actually. It's an image of the whole evolutionary journey.
So does that mean if you hurt yourself or break something, that there's some kind of significance to it in terms of skies or planes?
Could be, could be. This is a topic for people who are, study the human body and into medicine and to really explore in the future. But this gives some of the basics. This gives some basic information about correlations with the spiritual journey and parts. The skeletal frame, it seems to be connected with the skeletal frame as far as I can see.
And he's telling this to the boys.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
I know. Then he
So,
gave this.
I think Baba must have established a clear channel so that there were no explanations needed. And because, as Christina said, there were no formulations already, constructs in their heads about what should or shouldn't be or exist or how things should be.
Okay.
That it was able to go clearly straight through to them. And it would make sense to me if they never remembered it again, or if they remembered it, could not repeat what it meant because of the way it was communicated. There wouldn't be words for it.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I don't think the boys could have remembered this. And I don't think they needed to. I think Baba was making impressions using them as a medium, and that was enough. But here, let me just read this because this is a very interesting little analogy. It's probably too small, but Baba had been building up to this for 2 or 3 days. I don't know, I'm a little, oh, here we go. He said, Baba said, this is an analogy has never been given before. He says, picture a palace. It has a single door, but no windows. It stands on 3 pillars. It has 7 walls, 1 of iron, another of zinc, a 1/3 of silver, a 1/4 of gold, a 1/5 of stone, a 1/6 of wood, and a 7th pearls. In front of the palace extends a compound with 3 ponds, 1 filled with water, 1 with milk, 1 with rose water. Moving, okay, and now as I read, you can actually, Nadia drew this image to represent what we're talking about here. Moving out from the compound, there runs a lane. You see the lane there? 7 tigers guide this lane. At the far end of the lane, there blooms a garden full of sweet-smelling flowers. Surrounding each bunch of flowers is a mandap. You know what a mandap is? It was one of those little pavilions that you see a lot of in India, like weddings happen in mandaps a lot of the time. Within each bunch of flowers is a snake. When you emerge from the garden, there opens before you a desert. You see the desert there? This image is visible to you all, right? So there's a big desert. After crossing the desert, you arrive at a river. On the far side of the river arises a great city. And with this, our analogy is finished. Baba never explains it, but he says, with this introduction and extended analogy, the whole of Vedanta is intellectually opened up for the one who is made to understand it. This analogy has never been given before. Adding one last detail to the analogy, in that palace, which I have referred to, is seated a king. So this is a teaser for the future generations, huh? It's a very vivid image Baba gave. This sort of illustrates how visual and vivid Baba was being. And
Ward,
yeah.
it seems it is a wordless imagery for the spiritual path.
It seems like it.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. That's why I think these drawings are so important. I think
Yeah.
they really add to understanding the
Right.
text.
Back
Yeah,
to
I
that-
mean,
back to
yeah.
that idea of the complexity of it or the difficulty of it for these young men, these boys. I'm thinking about learning language. You know, when you learn language, it's about vocabulary a lot, identifying, naming everything. And then when you establish or become, you know, complete in your language, to learn another language is very difficult. But to learn your first language, the language that you had, was not difficult at all. It just took.
Right. So this is the first language. Baba was giving them a first language, so to speak.
That's exactly where I was going. This is the wordless language.
Yeah. I would have no way of knowing this, but what I personally think, this is my personal opinion from donkey consciousness, right? So this is the braying of a donkey. I think that Baba with these boys, he was working universally. And also, I think a lot of these boys are going to come back. I think this was for the time between now and the next Advent, because Baba told them they were not in his circle. He told them that many times. And he had been talking a lot about his circle. I think these are going to be people in between now and the next Advent who are going to come back and play a big role. I bet you a lot.
I have a comment. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. And I'm sorry that I'm talking now because I saw other people were talking in between. Ward, you're absolutely right. And when you talked before about this book and how Baba presenting this to Meher Ashram Boys, I was always wondering why them, okay? So part of it, perhaps it has to do with that the timing, that junction of time that he was doing his universal work. It's just so happened that there was a school, concept of a school, Meher Ashram school, and learning, and he is teaching and so forth. Recently, we've been reading Lord Meher about that particular time of Meher Ashram, and some of the discourses that Baba gave to them. Of course, nothing like this whatsoever. But
Mm.
in part of it, Baba says, part of the reason that I'm giving these discourses to you is because I want you to be a role model or symbol of my love in the world. So when you go from here and people are coming to you, they will be touched by the love that you carry, and I'm giving this to you. So just keep it the way it is. And also, word, I just karmically probably, I was in contact with a couple of these Meher Ashram Boys, the Persian ones, and none of them seemed to even come from this concept that you're presenting, to be honest with you. So I'm thinking perhaps Baba kept it for a few of those that they may have had an intellectual or conceptual background or so.
Well, you know what I think about that is I think Baba somehow got through to the whole group of them, but the content was such that they wouldn't exactly remember it afterwards. And what was happening was so powerful that they probably forgot most of it. But I don't think that mattered to the work Baba was doing. I think to make those impressions in the first place was what he wanted to do. But you know, if we didn't have this manuscript, we would not have the slightest idea that Baba had given this stuff. But let me get to the end of this. Okay, this one is a diagram showing the last topic, which is very, very strange. What Baba talks about is Pran. You see up here on the top left, Darya or ocean, how Pran from the seventh plane of consciousness flows all the way down. What that is, each of those different stages in the descent is the descending of Pran down to the very bottom. You see all the bubbles on the bottom? That's when Pran hits the gross and it explodes into bubbles. Bubbles don't appear until the gross sphere. And in each of these stages, Pran is flowing down. Did you know that? Pran flows down. So I guess when you ascend the path, you have to go against the flow of the Pran, I guess, apparently. That's what, and you see right in the fourth stage, you see the fourth stage there, the 7 levels. Well, what happens on the fourth plane is that, okay, on the third stage or the fifth sky or Asman, the vibration starts. And on the fourth plane, energy or Pran breaks into 7 layers. And on the third plane, it goes over a big waterfall, a huge waterfall. And it explodes into drops. So Baba's describing Pran's descent like a river all the way down from the ocean down to the gross plane. Did you know that about Pran? That the whole inner, so this is what contours the architecture of the inner planes. And he's not talking about it from the standpoint of a pilgrim ascending through these planes. He talked about that earlier. It's almost like what I don't know, archangel would see or a perfect master would see, where you see all this Pran coming down and the souls are having to come up through all of this to get up to the top again. It's one of the strangest series of talks I've ever read in my entire life.
Perhaps we feel it, Ward, instead of seeing it.
What's that?
With people with gross consciousness, perhaps we feel it instead of really seeing it with, subtle eyes or body.
We probably do. We what it? I don't quite
Feel.
follow.
F-E-E-L, feel.
Well, I suppose we could cultivate an intuitive awareness of it. I
Yes.
think you got to be there before you really know it.
So
But,
what's that 3 states of rising, 3 states of falling?
Yes, Baba says that power, rises in its intensity until the fourth level where it's at its peak. So that would be at its fourth plane, right? It's like a wave. The three states of, you see the wave pattern here? And you see in this descending thing, the wave pattern is sort of showed there too. You can see the crest of a wave. So in the fourth plane, power reaches its highest crest. And in the lower three planes, it diminishes. Now, actually on the sixth and fifth plane, the power is even greater, but you can't use it. Or actually what Baba says about the fifth plane is that no one wants to use it because they realize it would not serve any purpose in coming to the experience of God. They just know that as a certainty. So he says, never in spiritual history has anyone on the fifth or sixth plane used those powers because they know they're unavailing. So the power is actually there, but it only comes into use on the fourth plane. So the three states of rising are the rising of the usableness of power as you descend from the seventh plane to the fourth. And the three states of falling are the diminution of power as you go from the fourth plane down to the gross.
And that
So
makes sense, Ward, because
Yeah.
once you're on the sixth plane, all you care about is union with the beloved, right?
Right.
I mean, who cares
on the
about
fifth-
power?
On the fifth plane, you would know about all those powers, but you're
Yeah.
not gonna. It's like child's play. It's like
Yeah.
stupid. It would not serve any purpose to use those powers. So it's not usable. So the power is rising in the sense of its usableness. So you have a wave shape there, you see? So here's the entire of the inner sphere of the six planes is in the shape of a wave.
I'm glad you showed that. I'm glad you
Where-
showed that. I thought it was a whale. I thought it was a whale breaching.
Ward, where are I see the skies, but I don't see the planes.
No, the planes aren't mentioned there, just the skies, but the planes would be associated. First sky is associated with the first plane, the second
Oh, right.
sky with the second plane. There's just so much you can put into a diagram like this. Yeah.
So I'm trying to see how those states of rising and falling, how did you figure out that that goes to the fourth plane?
Well, this is a diagram illustrating what Baba talks about in the lecture itself. See, so Baba says that on the
Oh,
fourth
okay.
plane, you reach the crest.
Okay, because I didn't see that. And the stages are just ways of talking about what happens at each particular point.
This stages are the stages in the descent of Pran. You see, this is giving a whole different point of view. Out of the ocean, Pran descends to the gross. Now that's something that I never thought of before, never crossed my mind. The Pran would be descending, but the spiritual pilgrim is ascending. So maybe
But
you have to swim against the current. Maybe that's part of the difficulty of the spiritual path.
And is
So,
that
like,
also
on the-
related to the avatars, ascent and descent?
Baba doesn't talk about the avatars here. I'm sure the avatar has to deal with all of this, but he doesn't mention.
It's
But
a
he says
spiritual
on the
journey.
third sky here, if you can see the third sky, there are, in an earlier diagram, there are three parts, there are three sections to the third sky. And here you see what they are. Baba uses the metaphor of a waterfall. So if you can imagine, just as the water is starting to flow over it, it's kind of smooth, right? If you can imagine a waterfall, but then it free falls and a storm is the middle. And at the bottom, it explodes into drops. And that's where the drops actually come into existence. The drop form of the subtle body. I'm just going very quickly, and this is very mysterious and very strange. He seems to be talking about how the subtle body comes into manifestation through the third plane. So in the fourth plane, you're at the top of a waterfall, but your back is to the waterfall. And so you don't know the danger you're in, right? So
Wow.
Baba's describing waterfalls. A lot of these boys may never have seen a waterfall in their entire life. They probably hadn't.
Well, Ward, we're coming up on an hour and a half. And this is whetting our appetites for the book, which we now have to wait till August for.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cry after we get off here. But anyway, I wanted to mention people that I am posting on the Meher Baba community.chat website information about Ward's tour, his book tour. The places that will be, we don't have exact dates for everything, but there are some dates for that. And hopefully, because Marijuana is full, that people will be able to avail themselves somehow of more of this. You're coming to Myrtle Beach in October, right, Ward?
Yeah, that's right. The 21st to the 23rd, there'll be something on the center. Yeah.
And then
On this book, of course.
yeah, and there's something in Denver.
Yes, on the 1st and 2nd. The first is Los Angeles, 27th, 28th. And then in Portland for the next, the Bay Area, the next weekend. What is that? The 2nd, 3rd of September. I guess those are the dates. And then I think the 9th, 10th or 11th, I forget, in Portland. And then there'll be an 8-day program at Marijuana. And
Well,
then
thank
Denver.
you. Yeah, thank you. We can ask a few more questions. I just wanted to mention,
Sure.
I was sitting here the other day thinking that, $75 is about 5 lattes. You have till August to skip a few lattes, put your coins in the jar,
Yeah.
and buy the
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
It's going to be important. So,
I think this will be the last book of its kind. Unless the book shows up or unless there are surprises, but I don't think we're going to have more new material like this. This is one of 3 from the 1920s. Sheriar has published all of them, actually. The Infinite Intelligence Tiffin Lectures and now Creationist Causes. And there'll be more material. There'll be lectures that Chanji noted down and various things. But I would be very surprised if we get anything more like this.
okay, Candy has her hand up. Candy, we haven't heard from you yet. Jay Baba.
Yeah, Jay Baba, and hi, Ward.
Candy.
I'm understanding the descent of Pran as something that is touched on in the nothing and the everything. Am I correct about how the let's say the drops, let's say that stay in the first the beginning stages. One is an archangel, one is an angel, and only those that make it through all the way are the drop souls that begin evolution and involution. That's how I'm understanding this diagram.
It could be. It seems to me that Baba's talking about not just how things began, but how the inner universe always is. There's always this downflow, but probably that's how it originated in the, as described in the nothing and the everything in the first place.
Anyway, that's how I understood it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good connection. That's an interesting connection. Yeah.
And my other question is, can we pre-order this book?
Yeah, if you write to Sheriar Books, they'll tell you what to do. I'm not quite sure when we're taking pre-orders, but we probably are. So Laura at Sheriar Books can answer that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
By the way,
I know I'm on her list.
You think?
I'm not on a list. Yeah, she's taking a list. She said they're not pre-ordering yet, but she's writing down requests, keeping track of them.
Ward,
So, excuse me, Mahu was waiting?
sorry.
Okay. Mahu,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yes, thank you, and good morning to everyone. and And good evening to you, Ward. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. One more time, the wonders of Baba's cosmology and his discourses is revealed, and I should really thank you and all the people who helped you, especially Nadia, with the figures for people who are visual. Once again, you put this book together. I have a logistic question for Sheila, or maybe Ward. The first, seminar, as Ward just mentioned, is August 27, 28 in LA Center. So I was wondering, when you mentioned, Sheila, August, and I know it's hard to really pinpoint a real date, but do you think it's possible for the book to be out before his seminar? Because
we'll see. It'll be out of our hands. It'll be with the binders, but we're in touch with them all the time. So, we'll keep you informed. I just don't know, but we're giving them that as a sort of like a drop dead deadline.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Because
I'm telling them July 16th is the drop dead deadline, because that's my birthday.
That's
well, it just doesn't hold water without binders.
Yeah, I know. And by the way, Ward's birthday is next week, June 7th.
Oh, great.
But let's take an opportunity to wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ward.
Yeah, it's 70, a big 70.
Big
70.
Yeah.
I thought you said 7. So
A mere child.
7 years old with the mind and intelligence of 70 or 700.
Okay, Elizabeth, your hand is up.
Ward, you
But
do.
let me just mention first, but just 1 second. If you do get the book just before a seminar, I would recommend go right to the section of the book called Creation and Its Causes that has these lectures. That's the most important part. But the other parts are really interesting too. I don't want to disparage. I just skipped right over Baba's talks to the Mandali, for example, but they're really most interesting. But there's no doubt the heart and core is these 34 talks. Yeah. Okay, Elizabeth.
Oh, excellent.
And we're really getting 2 books in one, right, Sheila?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention something. Today is Fred Stankus Memorial.
Yes.
28th Center. I'm getting ready to go. And we just celebrate his life. Such a dear soul. I thought I mentioned.
Yeah. J. Baba Fred.
J. Baba.
Yeah. Lots of love to him.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So when you guys were talking, when Carol, Candy, and Ward were talking about the angels and archangels, that is from the Nothing and the Everything. It's that chart 132. That's my favorite chart. The archangel is at the Brahman node, and the angels, I think, are at the prawn node. And in the Nothing and the Everything on page 133, if a drop does consciously experience the middle world while entering creation, it becomes an archangel. And the angel, if a drop does experience a subtle world consciously while entering creation, it becomes an angel, diva, fairy, or huri, and remains stationary in the heavens of the third plane.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Somebody just asked if any of the events will be available virtually. That I don't know, but I do know this. I had hoped the book would be out in July, mainly because Ward and I are going to be driving across country. And my plan was to do a short interview with Ward every few days about the book or about questions that people had about the book. So we'll see if we can still figure something out where we'll stay in touch with people as we're traveling, because I have the ability to do that. I have my own Zoom, and we will keep a kind of a travelogue going as we're going around to different places. Other than that, it will be up to the centers where he's being presented, whether it'll be virtually. Marian.
Oh, hello.
Marian.
Bard, nice to see you both, and thank you for this presentation today. I'm in New York City, and I just going to kind of add my own little PS here, because I'm very grateful for your doing this book and these illustrations. As my PS is that as this is all the entry in the developing of the new humanity, that people get grounded in all of these aspects of the self, and that I am a student and a practitioner of core energetics, where we have to study, that subtle body, that energy body, and know that all disease that we have in our physical body begins in the energy field. So in the new I conjecture that in the new humanity, there will be no disease, because there'll be no clogging up of any of these fields. So this book is very, very important in this process of opening to that we are energy beings, we're not solid. And as we lighten up, how to get grounded. So there are some good souls out here who are helping with how to clear this energy field.
You know, I think a lot of that, I mean, I just went very quickly, but like this diagram is visible to you, right? With the points in the body. When you get people like yourself who study these things, I bet you they're going to unpack a lot of the secrets that are involved in it. You know, like the human body is apparently deeply meaningful, and like these different parts of the body correspond to the different planes and the different asmans. Or you saw that earlier one where the entire evolution of form is the unfolding of the human form through different stages and processes. So when you get people who delve into this and, you know, become cognizant of some of the inner sciences and inner mysticism of this, I think this book will be tremendous. I agree. It's going to be, it will probably find a lot of secrets that are closed off to people like me right now.
Yes, and finding more like-minded souls, because it's our collective energy that we expand into that new humanity arising, where we probably won't have any hospitals. We'll probably have ritual centers for coming and going rather than hospitals. So anyway, I express my appreciation for bringing this out, because there's things we can do now. Get your shoes off, walk on the earth, hug that tree, get those chakras in the middle of your palms on that tree bark. You know, there's a lot that we can do to flow with what we have here on earth. Yes.
Thank you. Christina, did you have something else you want to say? And then after that,
just a quick comment about the term secrets. I think that these do look like secrets from a point of view where you don't understand how things really work. And I think that this is how things really work. And if you are only exposed to this, say from childhood, then it's not a secret. There would be nothing about it that would be secret. It would be the way, like we now think about atoms and the periodic chart and physics and orbits around a sun and black holes. I mean, all of this would seem like secrets 1,000 years ago, perhaps. But it's not secrets right now. It's like, you know, what? So I think it only seems like secrets and ooh, woo woo special, and you know, you got to figure the secrets out. I think the real challenge is letting go of a construct and adopting or moving into a different construct. And it's hard to do, and it must be done, you know, it can only be done slowly and with work. And so I very much encourage sales of the book, reading of the book, and discussion of the book. And the same with Infinite Intelligence and God Speaks. And that's all I got about that. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I think that as time goes, you know, if you study some of the past advents, which I certainly have done, and you see how, let's say, what Muhammad revealed in the Quran got developed by people like Ibn Arabi, and the incredible understanding and knowledge that they were able to derive on basis of what Muhammad had revealed that went far beyond what Muhammad himself had said. Well, that's going to happen again. So I think there are going to be all these, we could call it mystical, but I mean, as you're saying, in a way that mystical, it doesn't mean inaccessible, but mystical in terms of what we have, of mystical sciences. Like this one here, where you have a light globe producing 7 suns for 3 different worlds, right? Well, our contemporary materialistic astronomers would just laugh at that, saying, well, there aren't 2 other worlds connected with the Earth that share a common light globe and have a system of reflections like this. They would just laugh at it. But if you came to know the inner worlds of the subtle, perhaps you would see that these physical planets actually do manifest an inner light globe in some way, and 3 planets, A, B, and C, that are maybe millions of light years apart from each other in the gross plane. And the inner planes are actually very close to each other. And so people will come to understand this. And what's more, there will probably be these great souls, like advanced souls who are also genius scientists and genius philosophers who will explain things and show a lot of the connections. And I think that's what we're in for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very exciting.
It could be some of these Meher Ashram kids. They'll come back and they'll just be whizzes, They'll say, easy, I know what that's about. Why do they know what that's about? Because they saw Baba show it to them.
And humanity at that point will be prepared to receive what they have to offer.
Yes, and I'm going to comment on that because the future is now.
I'm sorry, Marion, but we have a hand up.
Oh, okay. I thought I put it up. I thought I got called.
I hate to stop people, but Elizabeth has been waiting. Go ahead, Elizabeth. We're getting low on time.
I've been a good girl.
You have been a good girl.
Well, I was just going to suggest, and maybe you already said you were doing this. I don't see why you can't do something once every couple of weeks or on this topic, even if we don't have the book yet. I mean, why wait?
No, we are going to be driving across country.
Well, I know, but,
okay.
but if there were a meeting every, say, Thursday at 2 or something for 1 hour to talk about some aspect that's in the book. I mean, just today you were going to do 20 or 30 minutes. It's an hour and a half. There's so much to cover. And even before the book comes out, it's basically priming the pump. The more who hear about it and the more who have their appetite whetted, they're going to want to buy the book.
Yeah. And Ward does have a life, though. Just remember, he has his own life. He has to eat and drink, but anyway, I do think we can do more events if he's up for it. We can certainly arrange that.
Let me also just reiterate about the book that there are really different sections of it. I mean, I just skipped right over the whole first part, but the first part is like an 80-page. Here, I'm just going to scroll where you can. Let's see, is there some faster way?
If you go to the table of contents, you can see the division.
Yeah, the different parts of it, but they have a very different look also. This where Sheila would have been involved in this. The whole, sorry, I don't have a fast way of jumping up into the front. Okay, here we are.
Wow.
I mean, like even just these flashes are really
yeah. I mean, this is all a history of Baba's work with the schools, and it's quite an intrigue. I mean, this is a very intrigue. You get to see the pattern of how Baba was working. There really is a pattern, I think, where he worked on the first with the most primitive kind of level with hygiene and basic things, basic literacy, and then he moved up and up and up and up and up. So you really do get to see the pattern. And this whole first section you see is quite different in its look. It's just showing a lot of photos of Baba with these kids. So there really are different sections to the book. I've skipped entirely over Baba's talks to the Mandali, but while he was talking to the boys, he was giving a bunch of talks to these these men who were involved in the work. By the way, most of the Mandali never got to see the boys. If they weren't involved in their instruction and care, they couldn't see them, and none of them could even touch them. They could never even touch them. So obviously stuff was going on.
Well, it fascinates me, Ward, that the first book we got was God Speaks, and that was the foundation for everything, and then we got Infinite Intelligence, which, oh my God, was so hard going through that the first couple of times. Now we get this book. All three seem to be at different levels. And yet this one was written first, or this one was given first, and then the Infinite Intelligence, and then God Speaks. So we're getting them just in the order of the Prawn's descent.
Well, this is actually the last of the three. There are these three major books from the 20s, from the early Mehrabad period: Infinite Intelligence, Tiffin Lectures, and this. And this is chronologically the last of them. These books are very different from each other. The other two, Infinite Intelligence and Tiffin Lectures, didn't tell much about the path at all. But this book really does. I sort of skipped right over that, but Baba says a good bit about these seven skies or asmans, the names of them, Persian names, and what you find there, and all this stuff. Baba reserved the most esoteric, mystical information for these kids.
So, this book, though, reminds me of In God's Own Hand.
In God's hand,
that's where it talks about darkness and lightness, and it reverses what we think of as light and dark, which I totally never understood, but maybe I'll understand after reading it here.
You're right. There's a definite connection there. I've just touched on topics, but every one of these topics, if you dive into it, it really opens up a lot.
Yeah, so I am working on a way to clone Ward. If I can figure that out, then we will just spread them all over. That happen. But we have 10 minutes left, and I just wanted to see if anybody who's been holding back with a question wants to jump in here. Please go ahead. We're all very grateful to you, Ward, for doing this. We'll do another one possibly in late July, early August. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a real pleasure.
More.
Yeah.
And this will be recorded. I'll send out the link on various places, so you can watch it again if you need to, or share it.
On the whole, this seems to me to be the most esoteric and most visionary book of Baba's that we have. I would characterize it that way.
And you mentioned revelatory on the cover.
And revelatory,
I agree with
to
that.
this bunch of boys who then left and never came back again. I mean, very few of them saw Baba again after this period. So it was a unique phase of his work. I mean, we happen to know Sheriar Vasali. Okay, he did come back after like 35 years. Most of them really didn't. This was Baba's connection with them. And right after
this. So what
was
the point in their lives? I mean, what did they do in their lives that reflected this later? Do you know?
You'd have to get a Ouija board and contact them up in the wherever they are. I know it's very enigmatic. Baba did this work with them and then sent them out, and they disappeared mostly. Like
I think of it in terms of universals, people that Baba used as universals.
Yeah, I think so too.
He told them to them as they represented all of humanity going into the future. So something special was created through them in those moments.
That's what of course, I would have no way of knowing that, but that That is actually my opinion. He was doing a universal work. But boy, isn't it funny? It's 100 years later that the material then emerges for the rest of us to see.
Amazing.
But you know, when you really study this book, this material closely, it really opens up a lot. And as I say, the language is pretty simple. The language is quite easy. It's not difficult like God speaks. It's very direct.
Well, I think now we're ready. Now, after we get this and digest it, we'll be ready for the secret book.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So if
Okay,
that
we'll
turns
have
up-
to, yeah, Baba has to provide that now.
Yeah. Well, if that turns up, you have to come out of retirement. You and Sheila.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
there's one other thing I noticed. When you were showing pages of the book, there was a photograph of Baba, and it looks exactly like the one in the lamp. The angle of the face is exactly the same. The mustache is there.
Oh,
Wait,
Back.
what?
no, one. It's by a door.
The one in the doorway to the.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I know the one you mean. It's
Yeah,
the
you just
toka.
passed it a little while.
Once you get lost in the book, there's no turning back.
Well, I never did properly show this image, which is at the start of the talks. That one there, that is actually Baba at the window of the crypt cabin,
Oh, wow.
just as they would have seen him. That it was from January 1928. It's from the very period that Baba was giving these talks. So that's how he would have looked. That very window, that very time. So if you can imagine him lecturing, you know, he had his alphabet board and the boys would have, there was a platform, they were arranged around him divided into 3 groups. So,
You know, he's the colors in that are like the colors you showed in those diagrams, the black and the white.
yeah.
Somewhat similar.
You know, Ramju describes the building of this crypt cabin, and he says nobody could figure out what the heck this place was. You know, what sort of because there's a room inside, and then there's a floor right at the level of where Baba's feet would be, and then there's a whole cavity underneath that where Baba would go down to sleep. But now it's where Baba's body is lying. You know. And some of these photos actually show Baba, let's see, in the crypt cabin with some of the Meher Ashram Boys. Like here, this one here. There they are. And there's Abdullah Pakravan Chota Baba. He was experiencing the 6th plane. He was in a very, by the way, on the left is Sheriar Vasale, who some of you knew.
My gosh, his eyes are so wild. The guy on the 6th plane.
Yeah. Yeah, there are others too. Yeah, there you see on the left. Rajaram. Yeah, there's Chota Baba experiencing the 6th plane. It would have been very easy for him to have died in that state. Baba really had to go to great lengths. There he is again. Yeah. There's Ali, you know, who is the hero of Sadh's Mihrab. Yeah.
Where's Chuggin?
There are no photos of him. You know, the main mandali connected with these kids was Rausab. You may not even have heard of him, but he was the main one more than anyone else. There are others too, but so we have a couple of photos of Rausab. Yeah, here we have 3 of them in the crypt cabin. See, on the right-hand side of Baba is Abdullah Pakravan or Chota Baba. And on the below there is Ali. Yeah, you know, Chota Baba took Ali Chota Baba and someone named Ali Akbar, not Alaba, someone else by that name, to Iran in 1929 in like July or so. And when Abdullah Pakrawan got to the neighborhood where he grew up, he was an orphan. Both of his parents had died. But when he got there, he said he wanted to stay. And Baba said, no, not now. When the time is right, I'll send you back. But he insisted. And when he left Baba, they said there were tears in Baba's eyes. And he never saw Baba again in his life. Isn't that something?
Mm.
Well, I
These
think
boys-
I think we should wrap it up, Ward. It's been 2
Okay.
hours. And I'd like to invite everyone to unmute and let's say the beloved prayer.
Great
and
idea.
Goodbye. You can unmute if you wish. Beloved God,
Beloved
Good
God,
God.
help
help
us
us
all
all
love you
to love you more
More
and
and
more.
more.
more and
And
more,
More and
and
more.
more.
still yet
Still yet more.
till we
Till
become
we
worthy
become
of you.
worthy of
Worthy of
union
union with you.
And
Help us all
Help us all
Us all
hold fast
hold
fast
fast.
Baba's
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 Dhamma
very
till the very end.
Avatar Meher Baba,
Baba Ki Jai.
Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba,
Baba
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Avatar Meher
Avatar
Baba.
Meher Baba
Baba
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Okay.